I recently experienced my first heroic dose of psilocybin magic mushrooms, and it was without a doubt one of the most profound and at the same time most terrifying experiences of my life so far. It took me on a harrowing 10-hour journey that was filled with incredible insights about the nature of consciousness, peak non-dual awakening experiences, and a direct confrontation with my own death. So in today's episode, I wanted to share my experience with you. First, as a means of documenting my own process and the experiments that I'm undertaking with my own consciousness, as well as inviting you guys into my journey and my path of spiritual exploration and development. I'm hoping that this will be valuable for those of you who are interested in developing yourself, becoming more conscious, exploring spirituality, and seeing how psychedelics can be integrated as a potent tool to be used towards this aim. So if you're new here, welcome to The Conscious Masculine. My name is Jasper Brown. Now, I should probably say and start by expressing that I have quite a bit of psychedelic experience at this stage, but I've never attempted a heroic dose on shrooms. Now, back in the day, growing up, I used to trip with my friends at festivals and parties, and the experiences, the early sort of experiences that I started to have by exploring psychedelics was actually the thing that got me interested and passionate about spirituality. Those journeys really started to open my mind in ways that I could have never imagined were even possible. In many ways, it shattered my rational, scientific, materialistic paradigm and worldview and opened me up to something far more broad. And at the same time, I also had bad trips. I also had some horrible, terrifying psychedelic experiences, trips that went wrong because I wasn't prepared. I didn't really understand what I was doing. I was just experimenting. And of course, when you don't have a proper setup, when you're not prepared, things can definitely go wrong. And yeah, at the age I was doing it, I wasn't anywhere near as psychologically or emotionally stable as I am now. And so those experiences really made me quite wary of psychedelics in general. They sort of tempered my enthusiasm a little bit because what I saw, to be honest, scared the shit out of me. And the states that I was taken into and what I was exposed to, my greatest fears in many ways, wasn't something that I was super eager to repeat, at least at that stage. And at a certain point, I decided to renounce psychedelics altogether. I started looking for ways to arrive at the profound spiritual insights that I'd started to glimpse through my early journeys without any assistance. That's when I started traveling to India, exploring yoga and spirituality, and I started dedicating myself to the tantric path. And that was several years ago. And it's only really in the last couple of years that I started to explore my my former curiosity towards psychedelics with the benefit of having several years of dedicated spiritual practice under my belt. So I felt much more grounded, much more stable. I started to understand what was actually happening with my consciousness when I was having spiritual states. And this sort of opened the door for much more curiosity and to approach psychedelics in a new way, seeing how they could be integrated to support my spiritual development. Not as a party drug anymore, not simply chasing highs and looking for good times, but as an aid that would help me to radically shift my perspective and accelerate my path of expanding my consciousness and becoming more aware. So I started exploring with after several years of abstinence, let's call it, I started to experiment with a little bit of weed, and I would practice doing yoga, meditating with a little bit of weed, a little bit of THC in my system, and I found this was an incredibly beautiful way to get out of my head and really start to engage in a very somatic approach towards spiritual practice. It got me really into my body, and I felt that it opened me up emotionally. It started, at the time I was also starting to really get into men's work and was spending a lot of time doing sort of self-reflection, meditation, breath work, as well as developing more emotional intelligence. So I found that a little bit of THC was a really beautiful way of deepening those practices. That kind of piked my curiosity, and I started to experiment with LSD and DMT and had some of the most incredible experiences of my life through engaging those substances and combining them with the deep metaphysical inquiry that I'd been honing and cultivating over the previous 6 years through my traditional approach to yoga and tantra. And that really sort of has set me up, and I really started to achieve states that I was unable to access even with weeks of daily dedicated meditation in silence. I had amazing experiences doing solo retreats, staying in a cabin in the woods for a week at a time, just by myself, really just meditating all day long, practicing yoga, and being, fully conscious, very, very present from dusk till dawn. That really shifted my whole perspective on life and myself, and my spiritual practice got deeper and deeper and deeper. And I had amazing states in those long stints of meditation, but nothing, not even anywhere close to what started to happen when I started to integrate psychedelics. And I really feel like DMT, when I really had DMT for the first time, that it's like almost as if it opened a doorway. And once that doorway was open, even my regular spiritual practice was profoundly altered and shifted, and I started to have breakthroughs in ways that were previously not possible. So I've been on that train for the last few years, sort of every now and then. I wouldn't say I've been overindulging by any means, but some of those experiences took me 6 months or more to integrate. And I would say that I'm still integrating some of those experiences. And that would be especially the first times in my life when I really, without a doubt, without a question in my mind, had a direct experience of the absolute, a non-dual awakening, God realization, the process of waking up, and not as an idea, not as a belief, but as a direct experience. So vivid, so real, more real than this, more conscious, way more conscious, in a similar way to what it is to be asleep versus when you wake up, realizing that there's another waking up, which is the shift is even more dramatic, even more remarkable when you make it. And even more shocking because you didn't know that you were asleep. So I've been having a succession of these experiences, a combination of my traditional spiritual practices mixed with psychedelics. And that led me to what happened last weekend. As many of you know, my father passed away this year, so it hasn't necessarily been the best time for exploring, and I've had a decent sort of break. And at my father's funeral, a very dear old friend of mine gave me a little gift. It was a jar of powdered mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, and said, have this, and when the time is right, take yourself on a journey. So they've been sitting on my shelf for some time, and I've been sort of going through my process, dealing with the grief, dealing with my father's estate and all of this kind of life stuff, as well as investing in my time into this, into my work, into my life purpose, sharing all of these insights with you guys. So this week I had a window to experiment, and I took it. Little did I know that I was about to face one of the most challenging and at the same time one of the most ecstatic experiences and events in my life so far. So with that said, now I want to describe a little bit more about what went down, as well as the sort of major insights and takeaways that I had. And I'm going to follow this up and weave through this some useful takeaways for you guys, as well as some potent sort of warnings in case you have it in mind to try this kind of experiment for yourself. So the trip began with a 7-gram, what's known as a heroic dose. I think Terrence McKenna labeled it as a 5 grams can be considered a heroic dose. I had a bit more than that. So, I thought I've had plenty of psychedelic experiences in my life. I think I can handle it. I was pretty confident in my ability to sort of stay grounded and navigate the whatever psychological terrain I was faced with. And it was very slow in the beginning, very slow to kick in. I had a slow sort of come up, a tingling, beautiful tingling sensation, sort of this body load that started to arrive within the first hour. And at a certain point, it really started to kick up, and I started to have a very sort of heavy sort of psychological load starting to, shift in the visual field. A lot of, I felt my mind really, really starting to expand. Very interesting insights started to appear. I started to have this cascade of understanding sort of unfolding in my mind, as psychedelics often triggers. This almost as if the dial of consciousness is just being turned up quite rapidly. Almost this this feeling of zooming up, zooming out, deeper into myself and expanding in all directions somehow. And this is all familiar terrain to me. This is all something I've repeated many, many times now. What was new for me, at a certain point, I started to feel my ego dissolve. this sense of self, this identity, this story of this guy who I call Jasper, who you guys know and hopefully love, um, started to basically disintegrate and just fizzle away. My sense of self started to expand rapidly to encompass not just my physical body and my thoughts and feelings, but the room. I started to disidentify with myself, and like the entire context of what I was identifying started to expand. It went beyond the room into, this feeling of unity, this profound recognition of the interconnectedness of everything. I would say you could describe it as a non-dual state experience. Non-dual meaning no duality, no distinction. Everything is one, not as just this kind of new age slogan, we're all one, everything is one. It's more as a deep experiential recognition. In a way, it's like a love that emanates and permeates everything, and you start to see everything external that would usually be external to you as a part of you. Impossible to disentangle from your own consciousness. And, this is still in the terrain of something that I've experienced many times at this stage through meditation and also through the experiments with psychedelics. But at a certain point, I felt myself reaching a place of such utter and profound serenity, like the most deep, infinite, endless peace and surrender, as if I was dissolving into nothing. And it was so serene, so empty, so calm, so just absolute infinite nothing. And I felt myself like expanding in every direction, almost as if I was becoming so big that I just was the size of the universe. And my ego just dissolving like a pinprick that just falling forever, falling. And there's many states of awakening. There's a sort of infinite variety of states of awakening, and something that I've learned about is what's known as mahasamadhi, where a yogi or a sage will have an awakened state, have a samadhi experience. Samadhi. And what's known as a mahasamadhi is when he leaves his body. He or she leaves his body for good. They basically bliss off into infinity and they don't come back. And they leave this life in that way. And I'm not sure if what I was experiencing was that, but it certainly appeared to feel like that. And I felt like I was on a precipice, and that I was somehow being sucked towards this infinite black hole. And that I had this choice to make somehow. And I felt that if I let myself go any further, that I wouldn't come back. And there was this profound temptation, because it's so blissful, so expansive, so serene, so beautiful, so infinite. And in comparison to this life where everything is often so hard, so heavy, so gross, so somehow interwoven with all of this grasping and suffering and constant angst and the struggle to survive. In comparison to that, this state was just heaven. serene heaven. And the thought arose that if I did that, that my beautiful partner would come back and find me dead in my room, here on the floor. And I was gripped by this rejection of the idea of leaving, and this deep sort of sense of almost like a responsibility, as if my work here isn't done and that I'm not ready to leave this world. My mission isn't complete. And I started to bring myself back. I started to like work myself out of that state and come back to this space, back into my body, back into the room. I opened my eyes, and the crazy thing is that that feeling didn't go away. I continued to feel this like inextricable pulling sensation, as if the black hole, as if that temptation, as if the other side was somehow pulling me in with its gravity. And then what ensued was this fight for survival. I was in the room and had this tremendous fear start to arise inside of me, because I had made the choice to not go. I wanted to stay, but then I felt like I couldn't, like I was, like if I shut my eyes one more time, that I would be sucked and I couldn't stop it. And I started to be gripped by this tremendous fear. And I remember trying to ground myself, like massaging my body, slapping my face, looking at myself in the mirror, moving around. And like my vision was very blurry at this stage, because 7 grams of mushrooms will do that to you. It really kicked me somehow. And I started to have this, basically what felt like a fight to survive. And I was like rejecting this idea, like fighting against it and feeling like I had to fight. And it felt like a life or death situation. And I've never felt, I've faced death a few times in my life, but this was a new level in some way, an extremely visceral confrontation with death. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. If I had truly let myself go, would I have gone? I don't know. Or would I have just had a period of dissolution and then returned? My fear was that my body would actually stop breathing. If I was so far gone that my body would just stop somehow. And so I was basically trying to get myself away from that. I was trying to claw myself back to lucidity and back to reality, back to my body. And I remember pacing around, trying to like fighting it. Like, I don't like this. I've hated the feeling of not being in control. And slowly over time, this started to abate and it started to settle down, and I started to feel like, okay, I can do this. I'm not gonna go. I'm staying here. And eventually I started to relax. Eventually I came back to the room. I looked at myself in the mirror, and I remember having this moment where I just burst out laughing, because I looked at myself and my eyes were so blurry. Like other states of awakening that I've had were crystal clear. Like on LSD, for example, the states of awakening were so lucid, so clear. I would look in the mirror and it would be like, I've never seen myself. I've never been that lucid. I've never felt so conscious. This on 7 grams of mushrooms was almost like a so extremely conscious, but at the same time as if I was very stoned. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I just burst out laughing because I was like, I am fucking toasted. I'm so fucking stoned. Like I haven't been this stoned in, I don't know, since my early 20s when I used to smoke a lot of weed. I was just, it felt like I was blazed. And then when that happened, it like the spell was broken somehow and I just started to crack up, and then I sort of relaxed and sat down and started to just enjoy myself again. And then once that happened, I started to have some very profound states unfold because I realized that I had faced the fear of death, and I felt sure in myself that I wasn't going to slip sort of unconsciously into death. And I started to just have a very profound contemplation. I started to look at my hand. I started to just observe and was looking at my hand as if it was the first time that I had ever seen it. I removed, like, gone from my mind was any conception, any sort of labels or an understanding or biases around like what a hand is. I just looked at it as if it was the first time that I've ever seen it, and I had no fucking clue what it was. And what happened, I started to see so much incredible detail, so like beautiful, like it was almost like fractal geometry. Like I could keep zooming in, zooming in, zooming in, and just see my hand almost like an alien object. And at a certain point, I became so conscious of what my hand actually is that it disappeared before my eyes. I literally like dematerialized my hand as I was staring at it, and I was shocked. Like I was like, holy fuck. And my eyes were open, but I couldn't see my hand. And then I like blinked, and then my hand like reappeared. And I did this a few times, and then that for me triggered this dissolution, this recognition of who I truly am, what I truly am. And I've had God realization, first of all, the recognition that holy fuck, God exists. And then beyond that, holy fuck, I am God. And that's what a state of non-dual consciousness really is, the recognition that you are the creator and you've only deceived yourself. You've created this illusion of a separate self to have the experience of yourself. And that process of waking up is almost like the most indescribable gift, because you get to remember your true nature. Like the greatest gift you could ever give yourself is forgetting who you truly are, and then the remembrance of that, the rediscovering. And it felt like every single moment in my life had led me to that point where I sort of woke up again. And that triggered this profound just dissolution, like a shattering into ecstatic happiness. Like the most heroic, triumphant victory you can possibly imagine. And I had this huge catharsis, literally like bawling my eyes out with ecstatic happiness. Just weeping with pure fucking tears of joy of how incredible that realization is. It was like a million, there aren't enough words to describe how ecstatically satisfying that is. It's better than it's better than sex. It's sex for your consciousness. Like it so pleasurable in every conceivable spectrum, almost as if my entire being was just orgasming. And that for me dislodged some very heavy sort of ego shadows, states inside of me that I had been bottling up and holding on to. I ended up sending my beautiful babe, my woman, this long voice message, sort of really taking accountability. This is as I started to come down and I sort of come slowly, sort of found my way coming back to a bit more reality and this sense of self. I just felt this outpouring of so many of the things that I should have said a long time ago that I just wanted her to hear, like this profound declaration of my love and taking accountability for the mistakes that I've made in the past in our relationship, the pain that I've caused her, and wanting her to see just the most beautiful intentions of my heart and what I envision for us and where I want us to go in this life together. And yeah, what this awoken in me was this profound connection to my heart, just overflowing with infinite love. I thought about everyone in my life that has ever done me wrong or that I've done wrong, and it just was wave after wave after wave of just compassion, forgiveness, love, understanding, truth, just breaking me down and building me up again. And this just continued for hours and hours and hours and took me well into the night. And slowly things started to abate and I slowly came back to normal. And the funny thing was that in that state, I'm like, I even took a video. I got my camera out and took a recording because I was like, in the awakened state, it's hard to conceive coming back to reality, because when you're awake, you feel like I'm never going to not be awake now. But my history has shown me that actually you will go back to sleep and you will forget this. You will lose access to this state or this level of consciousness at some point. And the last few times I've done this, I wanted to take a video, but I just couldn't speak or forgot to or didn't feel to. And this time I took my camera, I started recording myself and explaining what I was experiencing and sort of putting into words what I'd just experienced, and the thing with my hand and this dissolution and the fear that was gripping me, the confrontation with my death and the destruction of my ego and these kind of things. And as I'm talking to the camera, I'm like, I get confused because I'm like, I'm talking to myself. There's no one to talk to because it's just me. I'm just talking to myself. But I'm giving myself the future gift of when I come out of this state, not being in this state anymore and having a little taste, a little insight, a reminder that it's possible to get here. And how beautiful, how fucking amazing reality looks, and you understand, and the perspective that you have in that state, how powerful, how profound. And so I have these videos and yeah, I've watched them several times now, just reliving it and integrating it. And wow, it's been so beautiful. And I think sort of looking back on it now and reflecting about it, I think 7 grams was probably a little bit too much. I think 5 grams would have probably been plenty, at least at this stage. Because although I really appreciated testing my limits, I really, really appreciated the confrontation with death. It was almost too much. And I think it's important to acknowledge that we have limits. It's important to respect the limits that we have and work our way up towards these peak experiences gradually, respectfully, cautiously. And more is not always better. There is actually I've found there is like a sweet spot. There's a sweet spot in the middle, enough to break through, but not so much that you potentially damage yourself, or you encounter sort of psychological terrain that you can't navigate, even though when you do have those experiences you learn a lot about yourself. And obviously you find out where your limits are. You find out and you push those limits, and obviously that is part of the process. That is something that's valuable. But I just want to urge here a message of caution, and to really take things progressively. And it's also super important the set and setting. I used to trip in parties and festivals, and that was not necessarily the best. I think it can pollute your experience with a lot of weird energies of other people's trips, or things can be messy. My preferred way, at least in this stage of my life, with the benefit of all the spiritual practice that I've done, is to trip alone and literally just meditate for 10 hours in the safety and comfort of your home. And if you're new to psychedelics, I really recommend having a trip sitter, someone to be there, someone to take care of you, someone to look after you if things do go bad, until you gain the confidence, until you trust yourself enough and you have enough experience to be able to navigate difficult, challenging terrain like I just experienced by yourself. Because you will encounter difficulties and things that challenge you, and you want to be able to navigate that without damaging yourself. If you're new to psychedelics, you also might like to try psychedelic assisted therapy as a sort of foot in the door, as a way to be held through this kind of experience. And another sort of consideration that I want to really point out is the profound importance of having a background, having a sort of foundation of spiritual insight, understanding and teaching and practice, to really help you to actually make sense of what is happening to you when you experiment and you're on substances. It's super, super important. Otherwise, you're just having experiences and you have no way of putting into context, no way of making sense. And if you don't have those frameworks and tools for understanding, you will misinterpret, you will delude yourself, you will take it into all kinds of weird directions, and that's not necessarily helping you in the long term. It's really, really important, I think, that we don't neglect our foundations. That's why up until this point in the podcast, I have just been talking about healing, becoming more aware, teaching you guys about emotional intelligence, cleaning up the past, integrating your wounds. We actually need to set ourselves up psychologically and emotionally, and even materialistically, with your life and getting your shit together, before we start trying to wake ourselves up. You have to remember that this is a long game. This is not something we just do once off. You have an awakening and an enlightenment experience and then you're done. No. That's just the start of the journey in many ways. And we want to become very mature and very grounded in the way that we utilize psychedelics as a tool for spiritual development. It needs to be, in my view, in conjunction with meditation, yoga, personal growth and development, therapy, coaching, and a sort of cohesive approach, an integrative approach towards healing. And I really can't stress enough the importance of that, because despite the tremendous power that psychedelics have to radically transform your understanding and your consciousness, they also have a huge potential for self-deception, for spiritual bypassing, and for getting really, really fucking lost and caught up in all of the traps, all of the new age ideology, all of the woke kind of philosophy. And that can just lead you down roads where you can lose a lot of time. You can fuck up your enlightenment. You can ruin your awakening. You can ruin your spiritual progression in life if you approach things in the wrong way. You can just get lost, very, very, very lost, very deluded and disconnected, untethered, unstable, ungrounded. And I've lived in spiritual communities for many years in my life, and I've seen countless people sort of just chasing states and not really doing the integration work. And just, being very floaty and getting lost on the highs. We need to integrate. And everyone says, yes, you need to focus on the integration, but there's integration and there's integration. There's integration of like, yes, I took a few weeks between one trip and the next, and I've done some journaling around it. Like when I had my first awakening on psychedelics, I literally took over 9 months pure contemplation and integration before I tried the next experience. And even then, I'm still integrating. I think I'll be integrating the insights that I've had in the last year and a half. I could be integrating those for the rest of my life. And obviously, successive experiences and more experiences on top is part of that integration process, revisiting, re-accessing those states again and again. That is part of the integration work. But we need to approach this like a science. We need to be running experiential experiments if you want to approach your spiritual path and development with psychedelics like this. It really needs to be applied with a very solid epistemological integrity and humbleness to prevent us jumping to all the kind of wrong conclusions or getting blinded by our own biases. This is not something to just be trifled with and to sort of approach willy-nilly without structure, without a plan, without checks and balances in place to make sure that we're not just getting lost. So we need to be studying metaphysics, we need to be studying philosophy, we need to be studying self-bias, epistemology, the study of how we know what we know, how we actually make sense, how we can discern what is true versus what is false, what is a relative truth versus an absolute truth. How do you tell the difference? I'm going to be doing a lot more content moving forward on these topics because this is my jam, in case you didn't realize. And I'm still going to be doing a lot more work to give you guys solid foundations. I just felt like with this experience, this was something that I wanted to bring in here and share. And I just love talking about it. It's part of my own process of integration. I have to think about it. I have to turn it over in my mind. I have to conceptualize it. I have to express it. And that's helping me to like make sense, and perhaps I'll get feedback from you guys, and that will help me see things in a different light. So I really encourage you guys to share your feedback, share your experiences. Let's participate and share our experiments together. And if used in the right way, if approached in the right way, I believe, and I have experienced, the experience that I have so far is that, psychedelics used in this way can radically accelerate your conscious evolution. In ways you just cannot even fathom, or perhaps you've had experiences and you have a taste and you understand where I'm coming from with this. If not, you have some of the best parts of life yet to be discovered. And this work, and this is going to be my life's work, and I really want to, as much as possible, encourage you guys to come along with me. I don't pretend to have all the answers. I definitely don't have everything figured out. I don't want to be a guru. I'm reluctant to even call myself a teacher. I'm a student. I'm experimenting. I'm on the path of becoming and slowly building myself up, slowly sort of going through my own experiments, and that's what this is. That's what I'm sharing with you guys. So I hope you enjoy this approach. This is the main sort of things that I wanted to share with this episode. For those of you that are passionate and really resonate with this work, you might like to come and check out my men's community, The Conscious Masculine. At the moment, I'm running a Black Friday sale with 33% off for the next few days. Usually it's $150 a month. At the moment, you can get it for $98 a month. It's only going to be available until Monday midnight. So if you want to get in, come and join us. We've had a bunch of guys join already. Come and join 80 plus epic dudes who are invested in this work, supporting each other, and really passionate about conscious evolution, masculine development, developing amazing, vibrant love relationships, and becoming amazing lovers. Come and join us. We're having an amazing, profound collaboration every single week. We meet for calls, so come and join us if that's your jam. And as always, please share with me your thoughts and insights and comments. And I just love it when I get feedback from you guys. If you resonate with this, share this episode with someone that you know to support my work. And I really so appreciate your kind words and any interactions at this stage, because the podcast at this stage is small. It's not getting crazy traction or crazy views. I hope it will one day. And so your support and anything you sort of send in this direction is so warmly appreciated. And it really, really helps. Lastly, I just want to leave you with a final perspective on the bigger picture, as always. So when we zoom out, we see that we're entering a new era of psychedelic exploration. They've been illegal, and they still are illegal in most parts of the world. Since the 60s and the war on drugs, everything basically got shut down in terms of scientific research, and that has really, really hindered the evolution of consciousness and prevented humanity from accessing these substances and experiencing their healing potential and their potential for development, personal growth and development, and spiritual insight. But that's all starting to change. We see throughout the world there is this wave of legalization, psychedelic assisted therapy starting to become more normal, more mainstream. Scientific research is starting to gain access to psychedelics in ways that it didn't have before. And that's super exciting. We're on the precipice of a new era. And thank God, because if you look around the world, there is so much chaos, so much confusion, so much thick ignorance, and humans being stuck in lower tiers of psychological and moral and epistemic development. And in many ways, the kind of the way I see it is that the modern human mind isn't particularly well adapted to the traditional wisdom traditions that have given us spirituality, the Buddhist tradition, the Hindu tradition, the yogic tradition, even the Christian tradition these days has become very corrupted in many ways. And what it took for a practitioner to achieve the highest accomplishments on the spiritual path thousands of years ago is largely inaccessible today for the majority of human beings, especially with the lives that we live. Most people don't have time to sit in meditation for multiple hours every single day, or to spend years and years meditating in a cave in order to reach enlightenment. We just don't. We're too glued to devices. We don't have the attention span. We live too busy lives. It's very difficult. But the integration of tools like psychedelics can give us a faster. We can access the kind of states that it would take you decades of meditation or yoga to achieve, perhaps even a lifetime of meditation and yoga, in a few hours on the weekend. Now, of course, it's not a sustained state. It's a trip up and down, like you're getting on an airplane. You're getting a perspective, you're getting a new point of view, and it radically recontextualizes your entire worldview. It's almost as if we're flying into space for the first time and seeing, holy fuck, that's the planet that I'm living on. Oh, wow, that changes everything. Well, I don't live on a flat earth. I'm part of a solar system. I'm part of a planetary system that revolves around the sun in an infinite universe. And it has the power, these substances have the power to facilitate that kind of mind alteration, that kind of conscious expansion, which changes your whole perspective of what is life and who are you and what does it all mean. That's what it's done for me. And especially in combination with a dedicated study, like filling my mind, fertilizing my mind with spiritual concepts, with a deeper understanding, with the right sort of foundations, as I've talked about. This can turn your life upside down in the best possible way. It can make you so much more conscious. In the space of a few years, you won't even recognize yourself. And, if you look at the sort of reports on psychedelic assisted therapy, the results are absolutely staggering. What it can do for people with addiction, what it can do for people with depression and anxiety, people that struggle with suicidal ideation. This can be flipped on its head in a single session. And that is just the tip of the spear. That's the tip of the iceberg in terms of what is actually possible if you approach the integration of psychedelics and spirituality on a long-term basis. Now, I'm anticipating some pushback here, and I know psychedelics come with their own pitfalls and challenges. Yes, there are plenty of traps, so we need to be very wise and cautious in the way that we use them. But they also offer us one of the most incredible shortcuts and perhaps new ways to advance the expansion of consciousness, not only in ourselves, but within the planet as a whole. And in my view, that's not something to dismiss out of hand. And I know there are plenty of people out there who will poo-poo psychedelics and say that it's just People think it's a shortcut, but it's actually just, it's a trap. A real pure spiritual path doesn't involve psychedelics. And who's to say? Who's to say who's right or wrong? Do you just believe your guru because he says so? Do you believe the Buddhists? Do you believe the Hindus? Do you believe the Christians? In my view, we need to stop outsourcing our authority. This is why I say we need to be scientists of spirituality. Ultimately, the buck stops with you. Ultimately, you can't rely on someone else to give you the answers. You and we need to become our own authority. You need to discover and understand what it takes for you to prove something to yourself, and to stop just accepting ideas and turning them into an ideology just because some guru or some authority figure told you that that was the truth. You don't know that. That guru could be full of shit. Just because a person has a degree or a doctorate in this or that, it doesn't make them the arbiter of truth. And as long as you put your authority elsewhere and give other people that power, you are robbing yourself of epistemological integrity. You will misconstrue the truth, you will struggle, you will not find it, and you will very likely stay stuck. We need to become the ones that actually figure out and map out and have the open-mindedness and the willingness to pursue truth for ourselves. And if you do that, then we start to develop the capacity to discover the truth. And we have revelations, and we have insights, and we have awakening experiences. And slowly, slowly, we start to coalesce a deep understanding. And when you awaken, when you have this kind of enlightenment experience, that will take on a whole different paradigm. And things will click into perspective, and you will understand things in a whole different way. And of course, there's traps there as well. You can grow a huge spiritual ego. But if anything, these experiences teach you that reality is so much more than what we have been led to believe, that you are so much more than who you think you are. Your entire worldview, your entire conception of self is limited, and at a certain point it fragments and it breaks apart completely, and you can dissolve it. You can dissolve your own hand in front of your eyes. And hopefully these kind of experiences open within you a profound curiosity. As I said, I don't know the truth yet. I've accessed certain understanding, certain insights, certain awakening experiences, and that has completely radically transformed my conception of myself and the world and what reality is. And I'm in that process now. It's an ongoing experiment for me, and I'll be following the experiment for the rest of my life. And I want you guys to catch that. I want you guys to get curious, to start having the willingness to approach your life with these open eyes, to question everything, to be radically skeptical, radically open-minded, radically curious. Because if I've learned one thing, it's that that kind of attitude, that kind of approach is the one thing that will lead you towards the truth. As long as you stay curious, as long as you stay open-minded, if you really, really value truth and you search for it, you're going to find answers that will just blow your fucking mind. And that will kick off, that will create this cascade of effects in your life, and everything will change. Everything will change in ways that you cannot even imagine at this stage, and life gets so much better the more conscious you become.